We are good to go.
Thank you, Lisa. I'll call this meeting to this meeting of the Legislative Commission on Pensions Retirement to order. It is a virtual meeting. Today is Tuesday, March 8th, 2022. And again, like I said, this meeting is being held in accordance with the memo dated 8/21/2020 from the LCC chair and the vice chair regarding commission meetings being held remotely. All participants are asked to mute themselves when not speaking. Members, if you wish to speak, use the raise hand feature that's down in the reactions part, in the lower part of your screen. The materials for today's meetings are available on the Pension Commission website or by clicking on the today's date on the legislative calendar. Testifiers, please remember to keep your testimony to 5 minutes. And if you are watching on the YouTube live stream, make sure to mute the YouTube volume. Ms. Dreslin, we take the roll.
Members, if you'll please unmute your microphones. I will start with Vice Chair Nelson, and then I'll go alphabetically. Vice Chair Nelson.
Present.
Representative Berg.
Present.
Thank you. Representative Frederick.
Present.
Representative Herr. Representative Murphy.
Murphy present.
Representative O'Driscoll.
O'Driscoll present.
Representative Rasmussen.
Rasmussen present.
Chair Rosen. Senator Frantz.
Here.
Senator Howe.
Present.
Senator Jasinski. Senator Pappas.
Present.
Senator Rarick.
Present.
Senator Sanjum.
Present.
Senator Jasinski. Mr. Chair, there are 11 members present.
Thank you, Ms. Dreslin or Dislin. I keep putting an R in there for whatever reason. Anyway, thanks. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from the January 26th and the January 28th, or the February 8th meeting. Representative or Senator Sanjum, did you get a chance to look at the minutes?
I did. I'm looking at them right now, and I would move adoption.
I think we have to do. Can we do them both at once, or do we have to do? I think we have to do them separately. Anyway, why don't we move the minutes from January 26th? Motion's been made to move the minutes of January 26th. All those in favor, please unmute and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. And now I'll Senator Sanjum, the February 8th meeting minutes.
Yeah, I would, Mr. Chair, I would move the approval of the minutes from February 8th.
The minutes, a motion's been made to approve the minutes from February 8th. Again, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Our minutes are approved. Thank you, Senator Sanjum. First bill we have on the docket for today is Senate File 3402, Senator Bingham, and House File 3777, Representative Hewitt. And Ms. Lincheski, you want to? I'll move the House or Senate File 3402, and Ms. Representative or Senator Bingham, if you want to explain, or Ms. Lincheski, you want to explain the bill.
Thank you, Chair Nelson. First, I want to give a big shout out to Ms. Lincheski for all of her and Chad's work and Mr. Anderson's work, and just everybody coming together on this bill. I really feel this is going to be helpful for our volunteer fire departments. And I'm going to be respectful of time. I do have a technical author's amendment, the 1A amendment, if my colleague from St. Paul would be able to offer that.
I'll move the 1A amendment to 3402.
Senator Pappas moves the 1A amendment to put the bill in the shape that the Senator Bingham wants. Members, if you want to unmute, all in favor of the A1 amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The amendment's adopted. And
Thank
it's
you.
my understanding the A2 or the 2A amendment is not going to be offered.
It is not going to be offered at this time, Mr. Chair. And then before I turn it over to Ms. Linczewski, I just want to say that this was brought to me by a neighbor who is a volunteer firefighter in the Newport Fire Department. And he did graciously submit a letter of testimony in lieu of testifying today to save time. So please take a look at that. But with that, I will turn this over to Ms. Linczewski to go over the technical details of the bill and then the summary from the board that did have a meeting and deliberated this proposal. So thank you. Oh, and thank you to Representative Hewitt, Senator Pappas, Senator Eichhorn, who are co-authors.
Thank you, Representative or Senator Bingham. I remember you as a representative, so excuse me if I say that. Anyway, Ms. Linczewski.
Thank you, Chair Nelson, and thank you, Senator Bingham. I will just kind of go over the bill, a quick summary of the bill. It is based on the summary that I prepared and that was included in your materials. The bill does, let me get the right thing here. The bill does really two things that are, I believe, coming from the constituent that Senator Bingham mentioned, the firefighters. And the first thing that the bill will do is it will make more flexible the vesting schedules that are available to fire departments when they want to join the statewide plan. So when a relief association decides it's going to join the statewide plan, it is able to elect a benefit level, but it is not able to elect the vesting schedule that will apply when it comes in. It's required to accept a 5 to 20-year vesting schedule. So the bill makes an important change to that and allows for reliefs when they come in to join to elect from one of three vesting schedule alternatives. One is a 5 to 10-year schedule, which is the same as what is offered in the Relief Association world over in Chapter 424A. The second is to elect the 5 to 20 that is currently in the statute, and the final is to elect a 10 to 20-year schedule, which is a longer schedule. So this, for the first time, a relief association will be able to elect its own vesting schedule to apply. The second important thing that the bill does is it does take away a provision or eliminate a provision that has a negative impact on a firefighter who wants to retire within the first 5-year period after the Relief Association has joined the statewide plan. So under current law, when a relief association joins the plan, it has elected, say, a benefit level. It may be, and in many cases I understand, is higher than the benefit level that the Relief Association offered at the time just prior to joining the statewide plan. So the way the law works now is if a firefighter retires during this first 5-year period after the relief has joined the statewide plan, the benefit that's available to the retiring firefighter is the benefit level that was in effect in the Relief Association just prior to joining the statewide plan. So this does have a negative impact on firefighters wanting to retire during that first 5-year period. So the bill eliminates that requirement. So now firefighters who retired during that first 5-year period will be able to get the benefit level that was elected at the time the Relief Association joined the plan. There are a number of other requirements, or actually a number of provisions in the statute that are being revised in connection with this. When this vesting alternative was put into the statute, or when this bill was drafted, it prompted a number of changes, clarifying and simplifying changes to the procedures that need to be followed when a relief association joins the statewide plan. So a lot of the bill has to do with these procedures that are being clarified and simplified. That is a summary of the bill. And if there are any other, any questions I can answer, I'm happy to do that.
And as was noted, there was a letter submitted by Todd Toker, captain of the Newport Fire Department. But I have on my list here, Doug Anderson from Executive Director of PARA. Welcome to the committee, Mr. Anderson. State your name and then proceed with your testimony.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair. I'm Doug Anderson, Executive Director for PARA. PARA's board does not have an official position on this bill. However, PARA's board has always relied on the SVF Advisory Board and has always taken their recommendation. The SVF Advisory Board consists of 10 members. They're appointed by the Minnesota Association of Townships, the League of Minnesota Cities, the Minnesota State Fire Chiefs Association, the Minnesota State Fire Departments Association, and the Office of the State Auditor. The advisory board did meet on March 2nd, and I'm pleased to report that they reached a consensus to support the existing bill. Happy to answer any questions if you have them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Members, any questions? Don't. Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. Maybe Ms. Lincheski or others can help me to recall. Do local relief associations have the ability to choose a 5-year vesting schedule of what they're looking at right now? Or is this something that might be an enticement for people to move away from their local relief association and move into the plan that we're talking about?
Ms. Lincheski.
Yeah, currently under Chapter 424A, both the defined benefit and the defined contribution relief associations can elect a vesting schedule that is as short as 5 to 10 years. So at 10 years, at 5 years, they become 40% vested and then increase each year thereafter until they become 100% vested. Changing the law for the SVF plan will be an enticement, I think, to relief associations wanting to join, because without this change, they could only go into a plan that has 5 to 20 years. So this is a better benefit for them.
And Mr. Chair, Representative O'Driscoll, one of the conversations I had with Mr. Tokar, who submitted the letter, but also I've had conversation with others. Relief associations are a lot of work for the members, and you have all the training, and then you have this. It's a lot, and so it is an incentive to move to the state plan. So that was one of the reasons.
Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the reason I asked that question is prior to COVID and prior to a lot of the other things that are in front of us right now, there was conversation about difficulty in getting recruits to go on local fire departments and dealing with that. And one of the things that the commission, excuse me, Mr. Chair, had discussed was a possibility of modifying the vesting schedule to try to bring folks in and see if they like it, see if they can work as an incentive to try to help communities and their ability to be able to attract qualified candidates to stick with the fire relief and provide a greatly needed service for their community. So, Mr. Chair, that's all I have. I just wanted to loop back on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative O'Driscoll. Any other questions? Senator Pappas, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that this had been an issue before about vesting, so I'm happy to see some forward movement in this area. I think it will help with recruitment and retention. And thank you, Senator Bingham, for bringing this forward and working on it and developing a consensus. Mr. Chairman, if the time is right, I would like to move that the commission approve Senate File 3402, House File 377 as amended, and it be incorporated into the omnibus bill.
What I have on my script is the bill as amended is going to be laid over for possible inclusion, and not voting it in, not putting it in the bill right now. But that's what I have on my script that I got from Senator Rosen, the chair of the committee. So.
I know Senator Rosen and I have a disagreement about that. I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay. I'll move that Senate File 3402, House File 3777, if there are no further questions, be laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus retirement bill.
As amended.
As amended, yes, thank you, Representative Murphy. With that, that
Thank
doesn't
you,
require,
members. Thank you, members.
thank you, Representative, or thank you, Senator Bingham.
Yes, thank you, members.
Thank you, Representative Hewitt. The next bill we have on our agenda here, that is Senate File 3542 and House File 4018. And it's the bill that makes changes to the State Board of Investment, makes some technical changes, administrative technical changes. And for some reason, there we go. And Mr. Burkick, if you want to give the summary of this bill. And again, this was going to be laid over for possible inclusion. Mr. Burkick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senate File 3542, House File 4018 make some changes that are necessary for a certain classification of investment professionals to be employed by the State Board of Investment and to be compensated under the SBI Salary Administration Plan, which was approved by the Subcommittee on Employee Relations and ratified by the legislature back in 2019. I understand that John Millay is here from the SBI to discuss the problems that this bill is seeking to address. So I'll just briefly review the bill itself. The bill is organized into 6 sections. Section 1 removes a reference to employees who are not covered by a collective bargaining agreement from a requirement that the State Board of Investment adopt a compensation plan. Section 2 makes conforming changes by striking 2 clauses that are moved to new subdivisions established under sections 3 and 4 of the bill. Section 3 establishes a new subdivision containing one of those clauses that was stricken under section 2. The language has been amended to expand the definition of unclassified employees to include employees who, in the determination of the director, are primarily responsible for managing or administering the investment portfolio, including diligence and analysis, investment risk mitigation, and implementing investment strategy. Section 4 establishes a new subdivision that restates the language from the second clause that was stricken under section 2 of the bill. This section makes no substantive changes to the current language, which just requires the SBI to provide an annual report to the legislature. Section 5 amends section 43A.18, subdivision 3B to clarify that the SBI salary plan applies to all unclassified positions, not just those not covered by a collective bargaining agreement. Section 6 amends section 179A.10, subdivision 1 by adding unclassified positions in the State Board of Investment to a list of positions exempt from being represented by a state bargaining unit. And then finally, all those sections are effective the day following final enactment. Mr. Chair, that's my summary of the bill.
And I see we have Mr. Muley here, and I see that Jeffrey Weber is here, but Mr. Muley, if you want to identify yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, members. My name is John Muley. I'm the Director of Legal and Policy Services at the State Board of Investment. Mr. Burkitt kind of gave a summary of the changes in the bill. I will give you a little bit of background and explain the issue that we are trying to solve for. The SBI maintains a salary plan for investment employees, and that plan governs the compensation and benefits of employees who are part of that plan. The investment employee definition is contained in the SBI statutes under Chapter 11A and applies to those who are involved in the process of investing the dollars on behalf of the pension systems and other funds for which the SBI provides its services. In 2019, the legislature approved an updated salary plan, which had also been approved by the State Board of Investment and the Department of Management and Budget. One of the major changes to the 2019 iteration of the plan was to add 3 investment analyst classifications. And these positions were added to provide a path of development for investment personnel from the entry level to more senior level positions like a portfolio manager. Previous iterations of the plan did not have these types of entry level positions. So once the salary plan was passed by the legislature, the SBI began the process of implementing the new classifications. And when we went to the Department of Management and Budget and through our Human Resources Department to begin the process of putting together position descriptions for investment analysts, it was discovered that there was a lack of clarity and some conflict between the language in the SBI's salary plan, the SBI's operating statutes, and Chapter 179A, which is the Public Employees Labor Relations Act. And I won't get too far into the weeds on the technical side of this. Of course, I'm happy to answer any questions about it. But essentially, the conclusion was this, that because of the wording of the SBI's current statutes that dictated that those investment personnel who were not part of a bargaining agreement would be part of the SBI's salary plan. And the language in the PELRA statute, which essentially was an all-inclusive, if you're not exempted from coverage by a bargaining unit, you will be in a bargaining unit. The conclusion was made that the SBI would not be able to hire investment analysts under the SBI salary plan because two such positions already existed in the MAPE classifications. And so what we did from there was we discussed with MMB the potential solutions to this problem so that we could fully implement the plan as it was intended to be by the board and the legislature. And we came to the conclusion that the only way to solve this issue in a direct and non-confusing or as non-confusing as possible way was to make a couple of changes to the statutes, which include amending the SBI statutes to remove reference to bargaining units for those employees who are going to be covered by the SBI salary plan and provide a specific exemption in the PELRA statute for those SBI employees who meet the definition of investment personnel. That is the goal of the technical changes in the statute. The overall goal is to fully implement the plan as it was passed in 2019. We have had discussions with MMB on the technical side of this. They have not commented on the policy side of it, but we do believe that these changes will resolve the issue. And we have discussed this issue with MAPE. I understand they are here to answer questions and to potentially testify as well. But I am happy to answer any of the questions that you may have tonight on the changes that we've proposed.
Thank you, Mr. Moulet. I see Mr. Weber is here. He's listed as there to be here to answer questions. Members, any questions on the bill? And I think Mr. Bruce is here from MAPE if you have questions of him. I guess the question I would have myself of Mr. Bruce would be, where does MAPE come down on these changes to PELRA to exempt these people from a bargaining unit? Welcome to the committee. State your name for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Devin Bruce. I'm the Public Affairs Coordinator for the Minnesota Association of Professional Employees. We represent 15,000 state employees across all agencies, boards, commissions, and we currently don't have a position in favor or against this. Currently, we represent, as Chad had gone over, the investment 2 and 3 analyst positions that this would currently affect. However, the job classes that is being created under this plan is substantially different than the job duties that we currently have one occupant in. They are mostly an administrative role. And while we would generally love to have all employees across all state government classified, we don't currently have the support of the administration to classify them all across the board, and they are currently unclassified, even in our positions at the State Board of Investment.
Thank you, Mr. Bruce. Members, any other questions? Just wait a second here, see if any hands pop up. Not seeing any. I will then, thank you, Mr. Bruce. Thank you, Mr. Muley, Mr. Weber.
Mr. Chair, Representative Murphy is raising her. action.
Okay, I can't see her on my screen. Representative Murphy.
Representative Murphy, please unmute.
So to solve this the way we thought we solved it in 2019, we have to, you're asking us to create a classified positions. One position or 3 positions? Mr. Muley?
Mr. Muley.
Mr. Chair, Representative Murphy, so we're not asking to create any additional positions. The investment analyst positions that are in the SBI salary plan were created as part of the 2019 changes.
Yes.
What we're trying to solve for is the notion that the SBI salary plan, the intent of the SBI salary plan is to be a self-operating salary plan for those employees that fall under the definition of investment personnel. And again, those are the professionals that are directly involved in managing, administering the investment dollars that the SBI manages on behalf of the plans. What this would essentially do is allow us to implement those positions which currently cannot be implemented because there are MAPE positions that potentially cover, right, that sphere. And under the PELRA statute, unless there's an exemption from coverage by PELRA, we have to default into those positions. And that was the message, we received from MMB, which is why we had to make a change. And I know it's a bit complicated and it's very technical, but essentially we're asking for investment personnel at the State Board of Investment, those that are covered by the plan would be exempted from PELRA coverage outright, but it's not creating any new positions. Those positions were already created in 2019.
Representative Murphy.
So those are positions that have people in them.
Mr. Muley.
Mr. Chair, Representative Murphy, we do not currently have any employees in the positions that were created in 2019 because we haven't been able to implement those. We do have one person on SBI staff who works in our financial services department that is classified under the MAPE classification of an investment analyst. But that person's classification will not change if this statutory change is made, because that individual's duties are not as part of the investment personnel. That individual is involved more in the compliance and accounting areas of the agency, which fits squarely under the MAPE position.
So Mr. Muley, that person is not going to be switched out of his position, switched out of the union position.
That's correct.
And I see Mr. Bruce has his hands up. Maybe help with the question, answer the question. Mr. Bruce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Murphy, just to kind of clarify, because I think you're nibbling around the edges of it. The real confusion is that they're in the new SBI plan that they have been trying to implement in 2019, is that they've borrowed the naming of a current already in existence position called investment analyst. And so we have essentially 2 different plans now, the SBI plan and then the MAPE bargaining classifications that are called investment analysts. And despite that, they do substantially different work. The SBI investment analyst would be doing the managing of the actual investments and portfolios, whereas our folks technically do the more administrative work and audit stuff within the department.
So,
Representative Murphy.
thank you, Mr. Chair, and so Mr. Muley and Mr. Bruce. Then we don't have those positions filled, but when they are filled, if we do change the language and allow these positions, then will the salaries be the same as the MAPE person that's already doing what they're doing, what that person is doing for the same name?
Mr. Muley,
So my understanding, and we do need to update our salary ranges for the current calendar year, that is in process right now, but the salary ranges would be somewhat similar. Our junior level investment analyst would be similar to an investment analyst 2 in MAPE, somewhat similar. And the intermediate investment analyst in the SBI's plan would be somewhat similar to the investment analyst 3 in MAPE. But the senior investment analyst, which is the bridge between the more junior level position, for lack of a better term, and what we term as an investment officer, which is more senior, there isn't really a corresponding position in MAPE that would match that salary range. So as that person progressed through our salary plan, the salary would grow naturally to be greater than the classification they would obtain in MAPE. And that was really part of the intention behind creating these 3 investment analyst positions, was to help provide that path of growth into a more senior level position. Prior to this, we only really had investment officers and portfolio managers, which were meant for much more experienced individuals. So you couldn't, for instance, hire somebody out of college at that salary level, or at least it wouldn't make a lot of sense from a budgetary standpoint.
Representative Murphy.
So the MAPE person would not be allowed to graduate?
Mr. Muley.
Under the current language, because of that person's job functions, that person would remain in MAPE and would be subject to the classification and salary ranges in MAPE. The only way that an individual would move over into the SBI salary plan is if their job function change, which would essentially require a new position description, potentially applying for a new job, and be hired as part of the investment staff at the SBI that more directly works with investment management.
I see Representative Murphy has a question just from the look on her face. Representative Murphy.
No, I don't think I approve.
Okay. This is being laid over for possible inclusion, so we can revisit this at a later date. Representative Murphy, if you don't have another question, and Representative Jordan Rasmussen has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for Mr. Muley. Mr. Muley, obviously we want to be able to attract and retain the best investment professionals possible at SBI, just given the important role that they play in managing our state pension assets. If this bill does not pass, does that pose any challenges to SBI's ability to attract and retain the best investment professionals in the market?
Mr. Muley.
Thank you, Representative Nelson. Representative Rasmussen, I believe it would. I think the problem that it presents for the SBI is that we're missing a third of the salary plan, and at this point, and when it was put together, the position classifications are not really meant to be static. It's meant to be kind of a progression, as I mentioned before. And so one of the values that we saw in this, and our consultants saw in this, when we did the market study and reclassification of the positions, was that for a recruitment and retention standpoint, I think your best opportunities are to bring people into the plan, have them learn, and continue to learn and grow into more senior level positions. And that creates continuity which, we think is very important. And also lets us at least nominally compete with at least some of our peers for some of these positions. Now, we certainly can't pay what analysts and investment officers make in the private sector. But in comparison to our peers, this is in the range that we would be competing in.
Representative Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Muley. I appreciate that response. And I would just say that I'm supportive of this, just given the information that we've been given today, that SBI believes that this is going to be an important fix for them to be able to attract and retain the best investment professionals to manage our very important state pension plan assets. And additionally, also great to hear that MAPE also doesn't have any concerns or issues with the proposed legislation. So appreciate all the work that's been done on this bill with stakeholders. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for the discussion today.
Thank you, Representative Rasmussen. Any further questions? I don't see everybody's. Representative Murphy, I see you're waving your hand.
Representative Rasmussen just said that MAPE doesn't have any concerns about this proposal. And I thought that when Mr. Bruce testified, they do. It sounds to me, if I've been listening correctly, that it's okay to have one MAPE person doing what they're doing now, but the new persons for the SBI to grow and so forth, those would be separate from that one MAPE person. The MAPE person they'll keep on, but the other 3 people can't be MAPE, or 2 people can't be MAPE people, 2 or 3 people. They couldn't be MAPE people.
Mr. Muley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Murphy. So we have a number of personnel at the SBI who are currently not part of the investment salary plan. They would either be part of MAPE or AFSCME, and it's a function of the job that they perform. And so back when the SBI's salary plan was first enacted, the intent was to be able to attract and retain investment professionals who performed mostly portfolio management. It was, very difficult to compete in that market as a public plan, given the salaries that these folks make in the private sector. Our statutes in 11A define the job functions that are part of that salary plan. And those job functions are those personnel that are responsible for managing or administering the investment portfolios. We do have other staff members of the SBI, both in our financial services department and as other administrative staff that perform different functions that would be part of either the MAPE or AFSCME bargaining units. And those include both the individual that is classified as a MAPE investment analyst, but also folks that are classified as accountants. There are a number of classifications in MAPE for that, as well as audit functions and things of that nature. So there are there has always been that split, and that is the reason behind that is that the plan was intended to impact those individuals who are working as part of the investment process as outside of the more traditional administrative process.
Representative Murphy.
When you propose this change in the statutes that we're considering now, did you have discussions with the MAPE people about your wording of this language?
Mr. Muley.
Mr. Chair and Representative Murphy, we did discuss this with MAPE, yes.
Representative Murphy.
Mr. Bruce, you said at the beginning, you said you didn't have a position at this time. Is that correct?
Mr. Bruce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Murphy. That's correct. We do not have a position currently on this bill. I think what's largely confusing is that we're using two different plans which have just similar names, and they do substantially different work. And we've raised that issue a couple times. And right now we only have one person in that position. There used to be a time when MAPE represented all of the folks, including portfolio managers on up. It's been almost 10 years since we've represented that position. And for this classification, the investment analyst 2 and 3 that we currently represent, that's a MAPE classification, is different than what's in this SBI plan. They do substantially different work. Their position description is largely different. Their job duties are almost completely different. And that's why we don't have a position at this time, is it doesn't really affect our folks.
Representative Murphy.
Is there a way that the new people or the people that are added according to the categories that are established by the 2019 legislation can become part of the MAPE organization?
Mr. Bruce, I think, would be able to answer that, or maybe Mr. Muley.
I think it's Mr. Bruce.
Mr. Bruce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Murphy. Eventually, I think that would be a possibility, but there would have to be numerous different hurdles. There would have to be organizing efforts. They would have to voluntarily join. We would have to rewrite some statute as well, because this is already passed into law, this new creation of the SBI unclassified plan. So we would have to classify all of those employees and then set up pay scales for them within the MAPE contract. So there would be numerous steps ahead of that, but there would be a possibility that they could become MAPE. It's just not currently by statute that we could do that under this plan right now.
Mr. Bruce, did you offer suggestions on how the language should be presented to us?
Mr. Bruce.
And did you work on any of this? Is any of this language in here yours?
Mr. Bruce.
Mr. Chair and Representative Murphy, no, none of that language is ours.
And Mr. Bruce, would the confusion between the similar names, if they named those positions something different, would that help alleviate some of the issues with the confusion between the two different groups being named the same thing but doing radically different work?
Mr. Chair, yes, it would certainly help. I think as this discussion has kind of demonstrated, it does get a little confusing because there's two plans, same names. We've raised this point, and Mr. Muley and I have talked at length about how this does get pretty confusing because it's the same name, different job titles, different job duties would certainly help, but we aren't at that point, and it has been passed by the SER, and it is currently in interim effect, so we can't go back and change it here. Is my understanding.
What does SCR mean?
Mr. Bruce.
Chair, Representative Murphy, apologies. It's the Subcommittee on Employee Relations. They're a legislative subcommittee that provide interim approval for all labor contracts, managerial, and unclassified plans.
Thank you.
Representative O'Driscoll, you have a question. I see you have your hand up.
Well, Mr. Chair, just to kind of expedite this a bit, Mr. Muley, is it possible that you could, with others who are interested in this, draft a different position name for this so that we don't have any questions going forward on this, or and then just pick it up when we bring up the omnibus bill? If this provision gets included, we can amend that to include that name. It's clear that that's the confusion from where I'm at. Mr. Muley?
Mr. Muley,
Mr. Chair and Representative O'Driscoll, so this is going to kind of echo a little bit of what Mr. Bruce was mentioning. We would need to amend the actual salary plan document itself. And that is the process that we went through in 2019. There's a very specific statutory process for that, which includes approval by the board, approval by MMB, the SER, and ultimately the legislature. It is possible to do that. Whether that could be done this session, that might be a little bit of an uphill battle for this year, because it is a totally separate process. So we don't have the ability to simply go in, for instance, and say, we're going to change the name of a particular classification. What we do with this document, once it's approved by the legislature, is we go to the Department of Management and Budget. They code in all of the different classifications that were changed and or approved, and we put employees in the appropriate classification. We've implemented the entirety of the remainder of the salary plan already. It's just these 3 positions that haven't been implemented because of this statutory issue. So I do think there will be an opportunity to do that in the future. It wasn't something we looked at doing this year because it would involve amending the entire plan.
Mr. Chair.
Representative O'Driscoll, I think you and I are thinking, which is a scary thought, thinking along the same line, but it's something that I think would be something that needs to be fixed. Representative O'Driscoll.
Well, Representative and Chair Nelson, it's that time of the session when you and I are agreeing. I don't know what's happening.
Sometimes that makes me go screaming into the night, but anyway.
Right.
Representative O'Driscoll.
Right? Mr. Muley, let me ask you this, and I don't need real long answers to it, because I think this may be able to help us this evening. There's a different code number for these 2 positions, even though they may have the same title. And that is what I'm assuming. And secondly, because the Pension Commission will be meeting again next year, perhaps we can bring legislation forward after it's gone through the process that you mentioned to change these names so that we don't have confusion with this Pension Commission or future pension commissions or others who may be interested in this topic in the future.
Mr. Muley.
Mr. Chair and Representative O'Driscoll, that is certainly possible. It's, wouldn't really be for me to say whether the board would want to do that or not. We'd have to talk with our board members about that. Potentially a new executive director, but the salary plan is, supposed to be reviewed every 5 years or so. We weren't quite at that point yet, since we had done it so recently, but it is something that does get looked at from time to time, and that is both for purposes of looking at the classifications and then whether the salaries are market with our other public pension peers. So there will be opportunity to do that. It is possible to do so.
So, Mr. Chair, I just want to ask one final question then. There are 2 different codes for these same positions. And I'm assuming that when you advertise or promote or recruit for those positions, there'll be some supporting data in the job offering or job posting that will be with a code number that people will know whether that is a position that may or may not be covered by MAPE or a position that is exempt from the MAPE contract. Would that be fair enough to say?
Mr. Muley, are there 2 different codes for the 2 different positions?
Mr. Chair and Representative O'Driscoll, I'm not very familiar with the coding system that MMB uses. I do know that our classifications are specific positions, and that when we hire for positions in our salary plan, we have a specific position description that we use with job functions, and it's advertised as being part of the SBI salary plan as opposed to being part of the MAPE plan.
I see Mr. Bruce has his hand up. Mr. Bruce, if you can help with the confusion.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. When the jobs do get posted through either the MMB careers website, and I don't want to speak for MMB, there are different job codings, as Representative O'Driscoll did mention, as well as when it is posted, it says for the position or cover or bargaining unit coverage, it clearly states unclassified or classified, as well as followed by whatever bargaining unit it falls under, as well as the statutory for MAPE 214 bargaining unit.
Thank you, Mr. Bruce.
So, Mr. Chair, then to Mr. Bruce, you don't have any concerns of confusion from what I'm hearing, because there are two different codes, and the promotional literature and or job postings will clarify whether it is a covered or uncovered position, or classified or unclassified. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm just trying to help us throw a lifeline out here to try to be able to get what the spirit and intent of what we need to do here taken care of this evening.
Mr. Bruce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Initially, I did not, but from this committee hearing, it seems like there is going to be quite a bit of confusion. And so maybe reviewing some of the naming conventions might be a worthy endeavor. However, if there's confusion whether they're being hired into a MAPE classification or into a SBI classification as an investment analyst, I don't think it is, because the job description will clearly outline, at least in the intermediary, clearly outline the duties that are expected of the person being hired. And we hope that that will alleviate some confusion initially.
So, Mr. Chair, I hate to
Thank you,
drag
Mr. Bruce.
this on, but I
Representative
think we've got resolution here tonight that they may be the same title, but there's different codes and classifications, job duties and descriptions, and perhaps the commission can charge the interested parties with this of bringing back a clarification so that we wouldn't have to endeavor to go through this kind of a conversation again, where there are two very like titles, but yet two different, very different tasks that are performed under those titles.
Thank you, Representative O'Driscoll. And any other questions? If not, this will be laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. And I see Chair Rosen is here now, so I will hand the gavel over to her if she so desires.
Well, thank you, Chair Nelson. I appreciate you pinch hitting for me. You did, you know, this forwards and backwards, and we're on Senate File 3499. Is that correct?
That's the next one. Yes, we're done with 30.
It took me
Even without a vote.
to get acclimated, because I can't, you know, I feel for anybody who coming into pensions. I was like, okay, Devin Bruce is on this. Where are we at?
And we're just laying this over for possible inclusion. There's no vote on it right now, correct?
Right. Perfect.
Chair Rosen.
Thank you. So we have Senate File 3499, Senator Rarick, and House File 3704, Representative Sundin, the MSRS Correctional, which authorizes the transfer of service credit from the MSRS General Plan to the Correctional Plan upon payment by an eligible member. And I will turn to Mr. Burkett. Oh, well, actually, let's have our senators speak and a representative. Would you guys like to talk, mention anything about this bill? Senator Rarick, or?
I will turn it over to Representative Sundin to make the presentation.
Okay, perfect.
Madam Chair, I think Representative Sundin is on mute.
It happens a couple times a day. Thank you. Thank you, Chair Rosen. The purpose of this bill is to allow Mary Lewis to transfer service credit from the General State Employees Retirement Plan to the Correctional State Employees Retirement Plan of the Minnesota State Retirement System. The bill requires payment by Ms. Lewis and payment by the Department of Corrections before the service credit is transferred. Okay, thank you, Senator Rarick. I anticipate a motion on this bill, and I really thank you for setting up the professionals that are going to help us through the weeds on this. Thank you very much, Chair Rosen.
Thank you, Representative Sundin. And Senator Rarick, you're good with that? Otherwise, we will turn to Mr. Burkett for the summary, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. As Representative Sundin noted, this is a bill for an individual, Ms. Maureen Lewis. I'll just review some of the facts leading up to this bill for Ms. Lewis, and then give a summary of the bill, and then discuss some of the policy analysis that you can find in the staff summary in your materials. Ms. Lewis is an employee of the Department of Corrections who on August 9th, 2017, was promoted to a position that made her eligible to participate in the MSRS Correctional Plan. At that time, she had been participating in the MSRS general plan, which does not provide as generous benefits as the MSRS correctional plan does. Due to what appears to be a clerical error on the part of the Department of Corrections, the department did not report that Ms. Lewis was eligible for coverage by the correctional plan and continued to have her contributions made to the MSRS general plan. This continued until December 22nd of 2020, when the department's human resources staff discovered the error and changed Ms. Lewis's plan coverage to the correctional plan. Minnesota statutes permits a correction of an error in plan coverage like the one that occurred here, only if the error first occurred earlier than 2 years before the fiscal year in which the error was discovered. And in this case, the error first occurred more than 2 years before the fiscal year in which it was discovered. And so under the law, Ms. Lewis's past service cannot be transferred from the MSRS general plan to the correctional plan for the period during which it was misreported by the Department of Corrections. Ms. Lewis appealed this to the MSRS Board of Directors, which denied her appeal following a fact-finding proceeding under an administrative law judge, which provides most of the facts I'm relaying to you now. This bill would allow Ms. Lewis to have her service credit from the misreported period transferred from the MSRS general plan to the MSRS correctional plan following a payment by Ms. Lewis and also a payment by the Department of Corrections. You can find a comparison between those two plans on page 2 of the summary. Moving on to a summary of the bill's in a single uncoded section that's further organized into 6 subdivisions. Subdivision 1 provides the definitions of some of the terms used in the section. Subdivision 2 requires MSRS to transfer service credit from the general plan to the correctional plan and requires the department to pay its portion of the cost upon payment by Ms. Lewis. And Ms. Lewis would have up to 1 year after the effective date of this bill to make the payment. Subdivision 3 defines an eligible person so that the bill can only apply to Ms. Lewis. Subdivision 4 describes the calculation of Ms. Lewis's payment to MSRS. The payment is the difference in the employee contributions between the general and correctional plans plus interest, and that payment must be made in a lump sum. Subdivision 5 describes the calculation of the payment required by the department. The department must pay the difference in the actuarial present value between the general plan benefit and the correctional plan benefit, minus the payment that's made by Ms. Lewis. And finally, subdivision 6 describes the transfer of service credit and accompanying assets from the general plan to the correctional plan following the payments made under subdivisions 4 and 5. And this section is effective the day following final enactment. Turning to analysis on the bill, the first issue is the cost, and you can find a description of the cost on page 3 of the staff summary. MSRS has provided an estimate of the cost, and they estimate that Ms. Lewis would need to pay $8,126, and the Department of Corrections would have to pay $20,392, and that's based on a July 1 payment date and also a 7.5% rate of return assumption. The second issue raised in the analysis has to do with the transfer of service credit following an employer error in the reporting of correctional plan coverage. And as I noticed previously, under current law, if the department makes a mistake in determining which plan an employee could be covered by, the employer has about 2 years to correct that mistake. And then after that, the employer can only be transferred prospectively from the general plan to the correctional plan or vice versa. The commission heard and approved a very similar bill to this one last year, in which a Department of Human Services employee had been misreported as a member of the general plan instead of as a member of the correctional plan. And this raises the question of whether the current 2-year look-back provision continues to be the best way for MSRS and the 2 correctional plan employers to address these kinds of issues. The commission has 3 basic options for addressing these issues in the future, if it wishes to. The first is to continue with the status quo, which is to address these through individual bills when they come up. The second is to direct staff to work with MSRS and the employers to prepare an amendment to exempt the MSRS correctional plan from the 2-year limit currently in law. The third is to direct staff to prepare an amendment to remove or extend the 2-year limit for all statewide plans. Moving on to the next issue, the third issue is a preference for general legislation, which is contained in the principles for pension policy. In this case, general legislation is probably not the optimal way to address this issue for Ms. Lewis because of some of the difficulties around retroactive general legislation. However, as I noted, the commission could amend this bill to address this issue in the future through general legislation. And then finally, I noted in the summary that bills like this one can be vulnerable to a constitutional challenge. Thank you, Madam Chair. That is my review of the bill. I'm happy to answer any questions that members have.
Thank you, Mr. Burkitt. That was very thorough. I think we'll go to testimony and then members, we have a few testifiers, and then we'd like to have a conversation about the options that Mr. Burkitt laid out. Ms. Lewis, welcome to the commission.
Thank you.
Very good.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Maureen Lewis, and I started my career as a corrections agent, and I promoted out to a 6-month position where I was a office assistant, which took me from the corrections plan to the general retirement plan. And then I promoted again up to the transitions position where I'm currently at. And that's how I went from the corrections plan to the general plan. From the general plan, I was supposed to go back to the corrections plan with my new position. So when I got my promotion, Human Resources told me that in addition to the promotion, I was also going back to that general or to the correctional plan. I was presented with the promotional paperwork, which in writing indicated that that was part of that new job classification that I was getting. However, the Department of Corrections Human Resources never changed that coding. So I continued to accrue service under the general plan, not the corrections plan. And I had no idea that that was happening until I received the email December 31st of 2020. Now I had promoted to the transitions position on August 9th of 2017. And that's when they, on the December 31st of 2020, they notified me that I was in the wrong retirement plan, but the discovery of the misclassification had happened prior to 2 years before. So they were unable to transfer that service. I've spent the last year working with different people, the MSRS appeal process, administrative law hearings, and went to the MSRS board vote, which denied my request to have the service credit applied due to it being governed by statute. I was told by Miss Erin Leonard, the executive director of MSRS, and Mrs. Susan Linchinsky, that my last option was a legislature fix. You know, I'm here today testifying as a MAPE member, and I'm hoping that I'm going on 10 years of service. 9 of them I should have in the correctional plan. But due to it being a clerical error on the human resources side and nothing that was my own doing, I'm hoping that you guys can help me by passing the bill to give me the opportunity to get the years of my service back. And with that, I would like to thank my representative, Senator Rarick, and Representative Sundin for all the help and time that they've put in getting me in front of you guys to help me with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis, and you are well served by those two, and also for your service. I appreciate that. I think we'll hold off on questions until after we hear from Mr. Bruce. Mr. Bruce.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Just to reintroduce myself, my name is Devin Bruce. I'm the Public Affairs Coordinator for MAPE. I want to thank Representative Sundin and Senator Rarick for really pushing for this bill. It has been a long time through the appeals process for Ms. Lewis. We started on this back in 2020 when we first discovered the mistake and when she was first notified. And it has been a long time and a lot of stress since 2020 has begun, as many of us have already experienced. And, you know, the huge difference between the MSRS general plan and the and the correctional plan can't be understated, particularly for the early retirement and the amount of stress being in facility and within the population and doing that kind of work. To be able to retire at 55, as we've discussed here many times, is really crucial for this type of work. So we really appreciate your support and hope that you'll add this into the final bill.
Thank you, Mr. Bruce. Members, are there any questions or comments for Ms. Lewis or Mr. Bruce? Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is not my goal to speak on every bill that's before the commission this evening, but I do want to tell Ms. Lewis that I'm sorry for the confusion that had occurred on here. And thank you for taking your time to be with us. I know it can be somewhat of an intimidating experience in person and on Zoom to be involved in this. The only thing that I want to just remind Ms. Lewis of is that the number that you received, and I do this all the time, Ms. Lewis, for everybody who has these kinds of things, it's kind of my standard, that the number that you received is not the end all be all number for repayment and changing over. The longer one waits within that time window that they have, obviously there's going to be more interest that has to accrue on that. And so I just want to make sure that you are aware that you have that window and that number may change based on interest that has to be paid on that money because of a delay of it being paid back into the plan. I always make sure everybody's clear with that because we don't need to have any confusion about, I thought this was the number. So we just always like to try to get that clarified up front. So Madam Chair, if Ms. Lewis has any questions or follow-ups on that, again, just kind of an informational piece for her that I'm used to doing in this commission.
And Representative O'Driscoll, we really appreciate that. Thank you for doing that. Ms. Lewis, any questions on that?
No, I totally understand.
Okay, perfect. Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With your permission, I would just like to move that this bill be incorporated into the omnibus pension bill.
Actually, we're going to lay this over. I do want to get, so we're just going to lay it over again, Senator Pappas. Remember, we're not taking any votes on these bills, but you are doing a motion.
Madam Chair, it just is helpful, I think, for the staff and the revisor if we can start building the bill, but it's your choice. So I'll withdraw my motion.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Senator Pappas. I appreciate it. I would like to get to Ms. Staton with MSRS. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Holly Dayton, and I'm the legislative liaison for the Minnesota State Retirement System. Mr. Burkett and Ms. Lewis did a good job of explaining the background and the substance of this bill. From MSRS's perspective, we appreciate Mrs. Lewis' frustration with this, and we will be poised to accept the remitted contributions when they come in and process the service credit if this is passed and becomes law. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Dayton. I do have one. It's Mr. Burkett said that this is the second bill in 2 years permitting a transfer of the service credit from general to correctional plan. Do we know how many more of these are out there? I certainly understand mistakes happen, but is this going to be something that is continual? And should we address the three options that Mr. Burkett laid out to address them at a case-by-case basis, or when they continue to arise, or direct staff to prepare an amendment to exempt the MSRS correctional plan coverage from the 2-year limit? And the third operation is to direct is to direct staff to prepare an amendment to remove or extend the 2-year limit for all statewide pension plans. What are your thoughts on that?
Madam Chair, thank you for the question, or the two questions actually. With respect to the number of members who may be in a similar situation, I would have to refer to our records to get you a hard number for that. I can't say that this is a unique situation. I mean, it's the only time that this would happen. We do rely on our employer counterparts to process employee positions. And so we work to communicate effectively with our partners, but things of course do sometimes get missed, as is the case with Ms. Lewis. With respect to the statute, I was doing a little research on this. I believe that the language which caps the look back period was added in 2010. And Mr. Burkett or Ms. Lincheski may be better positioned to speak to the purpose behind why a limit was put on the look back period. I know sometimes these can get very expensive for the employer if there was a long time that had elapsed, but I'm not familiar with the specific conversation around that look back. So we're happy to dig into this further and have that conversation. And just for the record, this language is in 356.99. So that's the general statewide retirement provisions and not just isolated to MSRS plans.
Okay. Any further comments, thoughts, members on this? Mr. Burkick, do you have any thoughts on direction? I mean, should we just continue to allow Ms. Staton and Ms. Leonard to look back on what they have and then perhaps continue to deal it on a case by case?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I think that is ultimately up to you and the commission. I think Ms. Dayton did note that that the language that caps this, that creates the 2-year look back that we're currently discussing right now. It's in section 356.99, as you said, and that's general legislation, so it applies to all of the pension plans out there. And my understanding is that this is in place really to protect small employers that you would have, like under the para plans, for example. Oftentimes those employers can be pretty small, and more than a few-year look back could significantly impact their budgets. I'm not sure if that's a significant concern for the Department of Human Services or the Department of Corrections, which are both fairly large entities.
Thank you. Representative Driscoll.
And I apologize. Maybe I'll use all of my coupons to raise questions for the entire session here today. But I know that during my time of chairing the commission, we have had a number of requests that have come in. And I think it's important for the commission also to hear these kinds of things, to see if there's patterns that are developing or if there's issues that may help us as members to look at legislation in a more global picture. I do remember that we had with what is now Minnesota State, quite a number of faculty who had moved from the defined contribution plan to the defined benefit plan, and we didn't have documentation on that. It seemed like every meeting for a year, we were getting 2 or 3 people coming through. I bet you we've done, since I've been here, 8 or 10 of those. It just tells us what's going on and getting a chance to kind of see where things are at without, and I don't know if the commission has ever turned down a reasonable request on these kinds of things, but I think it's a way for bipartisanly and bicamerally for us to be able to see what's going on and to be able to have a closer connection to these kinds of things over time.
Yes, thank you, Representative Driscoll. I agree with that. If anybody wants to think on this, and any of the members who want to think on this, and we can continue to look into this further, but maybe we just continue at our case by case situation. Any other thoughts? All right. Thank you, Ms. Lewis. Appreciate you being here, and Mr. Bruce. So Senate File 3499 and House File 3704 is laid over for possible inclusion into the Omnibus Pension and Retirement Bill.
Madam Chair, we do have another testifier, Ms. Jones.
Oh, I'm sorry, that was not on my list. Must have messed that
It was a
up.
late addition.
Okay, wonderful. And do we want the Department of the Chief of Staff from Ms. Khan to also testify?
Madam Chair, Ms. Jones is from the Department of Corrections, will be testifying. Ms. Khan and Ms. Lefholtz are available for questions.
I see. Thank you very much. Welcome, Ms. Jones. Apologies.
Thank you, Chair Rosen and members. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Connie Jones. I am the Assistant Commissioner for the Organizational Regulatory Services Unit with the Minnesota Department of Corrections. And I do want to say that the Department of Corrections supports this bill, recognizing the transactional error that was made, placing Ms. Lewis in the general retirement plan instead of the correctional retirement plan when she was promoted to the position of Corrections Transition Program Coordinator in 2017. I'd also like to just take a moment to say that we're grateful for Ms. Lewis's service to the state, as well as all of our DLC employees. They're dedicated public servants who work in difficult circumstances. And I am personally humbled and honored to walk alongside each of them to be part of the organization where this work is done with pride, professionalism, and integrity every single day. So I am happy to answer any questions that you may have. And thank you, Chair Rosen and members, for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. My apologies for skipping over you. And Ms. Lefholtz, would you like to contribute anything?
No, I think Assistant Commissioner Jones said it well. Thank you, Chair.
Wonderful. Any questions for our Assistant Commissioner? Okay, thank you so much. So we will continue to lay this over for possible inclusion to our omnibus pension bill. Okay, one last bill, members. Senate File 3540 and House File 4017 is the State Auditor's Volunteer Fire Relief Association Working Group Bill. I think we'll go ahead and do the staff review, Ms. Lincheski, and then there is an amendment to that we'd like to talk about. And of course, we have our state auditor and our pension director. Ms. Lincheski.
Thank you, Chair Rosen. Yes, I am about to summarize Senate File 3540, House File 4017. These are the recommendations of the State Auditors Volunteer Fire Relief Association Working Group. They met over the fall 5 times and took up a number of topics. The discussions then led to a consensus on several items, and those are now included in the bill in front of you. The summary, I will just summarize. There's a lot of details in the bill. The bill is fairly lengthy. I'll summarize the 3 high points of the bill. The first is that there is a big repealed section. So 3 subdivisions are being repealed. The bill sets out those, the language of the repealed sections, if you want to take a look at that. The repealed language includes a requirement that relief associations calculate something called the average amount of available financing per active covered firefighter, and then use that amount to find what their maximum benefit level is in 2 charts or 2 tables that are being repealed. Average amount of available financing per active covered firefighter is an amount that is arrived at by taking fire state aid and supplemental aid, adding to that municipal contributions, plus 1/10 of the surplus in the relief association, and then taking that total and dividing it by the number of active firefighters. That number, as I mentioned, is then plugged into the table, and then the fire relief is able to determine what the maximum benefit level is that they will be able to put into their bylaws and then pay out as a pension benefit. Those subdivisions then are being repealed. In addition, there are some changes to other subdivisions in the statutes to conform to this change. One of those changes is to revise the penalty for exceeding the maximum pension benefit. Under the statute currently, if a relief association pays a benefit that exceeds the benefit level that is permitted by using the tables, they are subject to a penalty, which is not receiving their fire state aid the next year. Under changes made to this section, the penalty will apply only if the relief association exceeds the maximum in the statute now. And the maximum in the statute is going to be $15,000 per year service for the lump sum plans and $100 per monthly for the monthlies per year service. The second big change in the bill is to allow relief associations to pay a pension benefit to a so-called alternate payee, who is generally a former spouse in a divorce decree. So this is an order that is received by the relief associations, and then they need to follow it or they'll be held in contempt. So the statutes are now revised to allow for that. They have been making those payments to pursuant to these divorce decrees in the past, because they're sort of between a rock and a hard place. But now with the amendments being made to the statutes, they are explicitly permitted to make those distributions. And then the final significant topic in the bill is something you've heard about for, I think, the last 2 years at least. And this is the supplemental benefits that are paid to firefighters and their surviving spouses when they receive a distribution from a relief association plan. The volunteer firefighters are entitled to a 10% or the greater of 10% or $1,000. For their surviving spouses, the benefit is the greater of 10% or $2,000. And these payments are intended to help the recipient pay the tax on the distribution. This has been included or has been really addressed and considered by the commission the last couple of years. It was pulled out of the bill the first year because there was a cost, and then the second year it was not included in the omnibus pension bill because, again, there is a small cost to this change in the statute. And I guess I should clarify that the supplemental benefits have been paid for many years, and it isn't exactly so the change in the statute is to allow for a single firefighter to receive 2 of these supplemental benefit payments if they receive 2 distributions. And so that is the change in the law that has caused this additional cost to the Department of Revenue.
Thank you, Ms. Linczewski. So I think what we'll do is our state auditor, Ms. Blaha, would you like to testify a little bit, and then we'll perhaps go to Ms. Hennessy and then the amendment.
You bet. Thank you, Chair Rosen and members of the Legislative Commission on Pensions and Retirement. Appreciate the chance to speak to this bill, and also appreciate that this is we have an option to do this from the road. Do want to wish you all a happy Township Day. I know I am out on the way to Stillwater Township to enjoy setting the levy. So basically, I'll just go through very quickly, just a reminder of what the group does, and then I think we can maybe just speak to the one issue coming up on the amendment. Just a reminder, the Volunteer Fire Relief Association Working Group was established in 2004. That was during Auditor Patricia Anderson's term. And they were created to bring together different relief associations, stakeholder groups, to talk about issues, facilitate communication, and vet legislation. A core tenet from the beginning of that has been unanimous approval needed before we move forward, and this bill is no exception. We've got members from the metro area, greater Minnesota, every plan type and fire service organization, municipal representatives, and also we again, as always, want to thank LCPR staff members Susan Linczewski and Chad Burkett for attending each of our meetings as well. As you heard, we met 5 times, but also remember our members put in significant time in between. Our process for considering topics is that they're submitted throughout the year, either by the working group members, by the public, or in some cases by LCPR staff on your behalf as a commission. Then we pull them together, rank the topics, and then start vetting the ideas. Once we come to agreement, we work up language, run it by the working group for final approval, and send it over. And this year we were able to send that over the week of December 20th. Now, after some more tweaks, of course, by LCPR staff, the bill is before you today. And if you'd like to binge the entire season of working group meetings, they are on OSA's YouTube channel. This year's bill, as in the past, is technical in nature, application to a number of rules. Now, to get a little more specific, we have with us as well today Pension Director Rose Hennessy Allen, and also 2 of our working group members, Eric Bullen, Albertville Fire Chief, and Aaron Johnston, who is Coon Rapids Assistant Fire Chief and the treasurer of his Fire Relief Association. So with that, Madam Chair, I'd like to turn it over to Director Hennessy Allen.
Thank you, State Director. Director Hennessy Allen, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is Rose Hennessy Allen. I'm the Pension Director at the Office of the State Auditor. And I'll just briefly talk about the issue that's being addressed in the 1A amendment. The working group.
Ms. Hennessy Allen, we do not have that out yet. So would you like to address the bill as a whole? Or the what? Yes, let's address the bill as a whole, and then we'll go to the amendment. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. So thank you, Madam Chair. The working group wanted to simplify maximum benefit levels because the current formula is confusing, and in some cases, the current formula is preventing relief associations with large surpluses from being able to make any change to their benefit levels, which is resulting in growing surpluses and then no additional money to their firefighters. The working group wanted to provide relief associations and their cities and towns with flexibility to set benefit levels that are needed to support their firefighters and help them with recruitment and retention. The bill also modifies the service credit certification process. Fire chiefs are required to certify service credit amounts for each firefighter annually, and the bill allows a firefighter to request from the fire chief a written explanation and documentation to support the chief's determination of service credit. So this provides greater transparency and helps resolve any questions about certified service credit amounts that a firefighter may have. And then the bill, as Ms. Lincheski explained, modifies distributions to alternate payees pursuant to a domestic relations order after a firefighter is divorced. And I'm happy to answer any questions that may come up.
You bet. Thank you. And Chief Bullen, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Eric Bullen, Albertville Fire Chief. I also serve for the Minnesota State Fire Chiefs Association as the liaison to the Volunteer Pension Working Group. Here for any questions from the commission or from the Director or State Auditor. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you so much for your service.
Thank you.
You bet. And Mr. Johnston, welcome.
Chair Rosen, thank you. Commission, thanks for having me. I'm Aaron Johnston. I'm the treasurer of the Coon Rapids Fire Department Relief Association. I've been treasurer since about 2008. On the department since 1994. I'm also a member of the working group since about 2011. And I appreciate your time and you guys hearing our bill, and I'll stand for questions.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so and thank you for your service too, Mr. Johnston. We do have the 1A amendment, and that was posted, I believe, and everybody could have it, should have it. Ms. Lincheski, can you run through that amendment, please?
Yeah, yes, thank you, Chair Rosen. The amendment is a simple one in that it deletes all the sections that relate to the provisions that have been that are being repealed in the bill. So the repealer is section 14. The rest of the sections are really conforming changes that were made to the statute in order to take into account the removal of the average available, whatever the phrase is there, average amount of available financing per active covered firefighter, the references to the chart, to the tables in the statutes. So you will see that the sections deleted there are 1, 4, 5, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, and 14. What remains then is the certification by the fire chief provision Ms. Hennessy Allen just talked about, the quadro or the divorce decree sections, and then the supplemental benefit section. That is the amendment.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lincheski. And Representative Rasmussen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to speak briefly to the amendment, and yeah, that would basically take a look at the maximum benefit levels, set and the formula that reliefs currently have to use. I agree with Auditor Blaha and Ms. Hennessy Allen that the current formula is too conservative and it leads to overfunding issues for defined benefit plans. And so I'm grateful that the working group has taken a serious look at this and has spent time looking at what could be done. The one concern that I have, and would just ask that we have some more time to work on it this session, is the bill essentially today without the amendment removes the formula, and I would like to see the formula tweaked, and so that we still have a governor on the amount of benefit increases that are going to be taking place. The staff memo also highlighted some confusion in some of the language in existing statute that I think warrants some further review. And so would just ask, Madam Chair, that we have the opportunity to continue to work and talk about this, so that we're not just removing a formula that we all agree is too conservative, but not having some type of governor there to make sure that reliefs don't get in trouble with benefit increases.
Thank you, Representative Matt Rasmussen. Any other further comments on that? State Auditor Blaha.
Pardon me, I was clicking around here. I think it'd be helpful if I think that Director Allen explains it really well about a little bit more maybe about the rationale of why we are putting this forward. To be clear, a little more time to think about things. I mean, we can certainly work on that, but maybe hearing, I think, Director Allen's description might be helpful.
Mhm. What I understand too, that this was not, was this discussed fully in the working group?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We had a pretty extensive discussion about that. We considered a number of options, and so yes, we actually had quite a bit of discussion. In fact, yeah, we won't get anything to you that hasn't been thoroughly vetted. And so yes, we spent significant time on this.
Director Hennessy Allen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, we heard during working group meetings that the Relief Association trustees and then the city council members and town board members look at a Relief Association's funded status and look at the relief's finances when they're considering a benefit level change. And if local boards approve a benefit level that they can afford and that's reasonable, but it exceeds the current formula that's in statute, the penalty is disqualification from receiving fire state aid, which is a really severe penalty. And then if there are concerns about setting a benefit level that's more than what they can afford, that situation could exist in the current structure too. Relief associations have the ability to decrease their benefit levels, and from time to time we do see some groups that choose to do that. Firefighters live in their communities and they're taxpayers in their communities, and they don't want to create a financial burden for their family and friends who live there. So they're prudent, they're cautious when they set benefit levels, and I think that that's illustrated by the average funding ratio that's 140% for the relief associations in Minnesota. And then one last comment, the statewide volunteer firefighter plan with PERA has never had this additional maximum benefit level calculation. Fire departments in cities and towns in that plan set a benefit level within the lump sum limit. That's the same as for relief associations. It's the limit of $15,000 per year of service. And we're not aware of issues that have been caused by benefits being set too high with that plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any comments on this? What I think I would like to do, and perhaps get some feedback on this, is this is going to be laid over anyway, this bill, for possible inclusion. And I think the conversation should continue, because we're hearing two different sides of the story a little bit. So I just want to make sure that we're secure in, and perhaps this amendment is not needed, but I want to be sure that all parties have got the voice in this, in Senate File 3540 and House File 4017. So I think we should continue this conversation. Auditor Blaha. And Representative Rasmussen, if you'd like to be a part of that conversation too, I would appreciate that. And anybody else?
Chair Rosen, anytime we all can get together and talk pensions, I am available. I look forward to it.
We're good about that, yes. Representative Rasmussen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I appreciate very much the discussion, and thank you, Auditor Blaha. Yeah, I look forward to kind of diving into the details here and maybe looking at cleaning up some of the language and thinking about what a potential kind of reform to this formula could look like to make sure we don't run into perpetual overfunding issues. And so appreciate the conversation and look forward to working with the state auditor on this.
Julie, you're muted.
Sorry, I don't know how that happened. Representative Nelson, my apologies.
Yes, thank you. I agree. I think we should look at this farther. Looking at the amendment and looking at the bill, we're basically gutting the bill and leaving very little bit there. And this is the work the volunteer firefighter Association group has been working on. I think we need to take a deeper look at this. And again, if it's talking pensions, I will gladly participate if I have the time.
Wonderful. Thank you, Representative Nelson. Between the two of you and our state auditor and director, I think we can at least clean up the language to make sure that it is going to work and that we're all secure that there isn't going to be some overreach or underreach too. So any further comments, questions? Okay, with that, Senate File 3540 and House File 4717 is laid over for possible inclusion into the Omnibus Pension and Retirement Bill. Okay, members, that is all we have for tonight.
Madam Chair, were there two other people who wanted to testify? I see two names on the testimony list.
We did get to them. Yes, I don't know if they have further comments. Chief Bullen or Mr. Johnston, do you have any further comments?
Madam Chair, Eric Bullen. Nothing further. We support whatever the commission wants us to take a look at, and we'll take a look at it. So we're available as well.
Thank you so much.
What he said.
It was good. All right. So members, that's all we have for tonight. We are building our omnibus pension bill, and we'll get this right as we always do. I would assume we will have a hearing next Tuesday again at 5 o'clock. So stay posted on that. Are there any questions, comments? I see none. Representative Nelson, do you have anything that you'd like to say or?
No, it went well, and we had a good discussion, and we have some things we need, like I said, to look at as we continue on, but I think we're getting down the road.
Yes, we are.
Get a bill together earlier than we have sometimes in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the goal. That's right. Again, thank you very much, everybody, for your time and diligence and your passion for pensions that we all have. With that, the Pension Commission is adjourned. Good night. Thank you.